This is an exciting day. We have some incredible people from around the country, some names that we all read over the years, and we continue to read and we continue to reference, and they have been individuals who have pushed us, made us think about what we do and why we do what we're doing as social workers, and how do we make sure what we're doing is important and valuable. And to get all these folks under one roof here in Houston for 2 days, I am just ecstatic. And with that, I need to recognize Danielle Parrish, who came to me a couple years ago and said, I have an idea. And I love ideas. You don't have ideas. If you're not thinking about ideas, you won't grow and change. And an analogy I gave the other day with some folks that were here is that if you think about a frog, when a frog lays its eggs, and I don't know if you've ever seen it in water, it's a huge sack with thousands and millions of eggs in there. And then out of this huge sack of eggs comes maybe 500,000 tadpoles. And then out of the 500,000 tadpoles, you might end up with 1,000 little baby frogs. And then out of those 1,000 little baby frogs, you'll end up with maybe a half dozen medium-sized frogs, and you get to one bullfrog. To get to one bullfrog, you have to start with those millions of eggs. And so if we start to discount ideas, we'll never get to be the big bullfrog. And Danielle came in, and we now have a big bullfrog. And I want to thank Danielle for this. What was that song about something want to be a bullfrog? What was that? There was a song back in the 60s. Jeremiah, yeah, maybe we should rephrase that about Danielle as a bullfrog or something. But seriously, I'm real pleased to see all of you here. Many of you are longtime friends. And I'm glad you're here to Houston. We finally got you here. We got some wonderful weather in store for you, but let's really put on our thinking hats over the next 2 days and challenge and push each other, because that's how we as practitioners and we as a profession become stronger. Again, thank you all. Thank you for being here, and have a wonderful 2 days here at the college. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Colby, for that for your kind words. Thank you for supporting me in this process and supporting my ideas. And putting all the support staff in place to make this happen. I appreciate it. And so I wanted to start today by answering the question, so why this symposium now? And I'd like to start with my own personal story. Is that working? Okay. All right. So I received my MSW in 1999 in a program that was very clinically focused and that had a large component looking at using science to inform and evaluate practice. When I got into the field, I was disappointed to learn that research wasn't being used very often. And we as a public mental health entity rarely knew if we were truly helping the people we served. This troubled me. My job was stressful and demanding. The children and families vulnerable. We were investing a lot of time and money into helping these families. And the families were devoting a lot of time into their own treatment. And I wanted to know that the program I was participating, is that working? Okay, was making a difference to justify it all. Anecdotally, the families and children really seemed to be getting better. Many missed appointments or dropped out of treatment. And the most common interventions used with children and families during that time was unstructured talk therapy, unstructured play therapy, Gestalt, and Gestalt or psychodynamic therapies. Knowing CBT was one of the most effective approaches at the time across a variety of populations and issues I was dealing with, I bought CBT manuals and books and attempted to train myself in those modalities. Because my supervisor wasn't trained in CBT, they were trained in Gestalt and psychodynamic therapy and ego psychology. But it was still challenging to do CBT as intended when the clients did not make their appointments and they were more worried about dealing with the consequences of poverty and navigating the complex and demanding public service system. While I used single system designs to evaluate my practice, Many of the data points were missing due to missing their appointments. And it was still unsatisfying because the larger system I worked within seemed to be sabotaging their success. I constantly wondered why the research I read about my program wasn't being used where I worked, and why we weren't evaluating our impact beyond counting the numbers of families and individuals served, or why we weren't trying to understand why people were missing so many of their appointments, or how to improve access to service and the quality of treatment, and to maximize the efficiency of the larger system. I felt it was very difficult to make an impact on a client-by-client basis within the current system, and it was very sad for me to watch our clients become worse and worse as they interacted with the public system, die while in unsafe foster care placements, be locked in a juvenile detention facility for 2 years while actively hallucinating and assaulting the guards and racking up charges. I felt like I needed to do something more to have an impact. Naive, I returned to get my Ph.D. believing that I might be able to have a wider impact on these high-risk children and their families by conducting intervention research focused on addressing some of these feasibility issues that I observed in my practice. When I learned that much of the intervention research that was being produced wasn't being used widely either, I was again disappointed. I thought, why do research if no one's going to use it and it's not going to help very many people? Well, I suppose I should have realized that bridging the research practice gap was a more complex problem than I initially realized. I don't think I was alone in this assumption. In fact, I think this realization is beginning to take traction more widely as well. Increasing researcher-practitioner partnerships and supporting implementation science has become a priority of the National Institutes of Justice, National Institutes of Drug Abuse, and other federally funded agencies after having funded decades of research, much of which has not made it into the communities it was designed to serve. One example of this comes from a fairly recent study by Becker and colleagues in 2004 in Behavior Research and Therapy, which found that despite the widespread efficacy of exposure therapy for PTSD, only 17% of psychologists reported using it in their practice when treating PTSD. In a related follow-up publication in 2005, to sort of explore why this was the case, Seifert and colleagues suggest that the reasons for this are complex, noting that practitioners reported having difficulty retaining clients in treatment long enough to get exposure therapy, or keeping them in treatment once they started exposure therapy, which in turn impacted the use of these treatments in real practice settings. Another example is a recent request by NIDA. Just last month, they sent out a request for public comment from practitioners and other stakeholders in an effort to identify the greatest challenges preventing the widespread adoption of evidence-based drug abuse treatment interventions. So I think it's safe to say that it's now widely recognized that neither practitioners nor researchers alone can meet our shared goal of maximizing the positive impact of services with clients, communities, and the populations that we all care about. This two-day symposium was conceptualized as an opportunity to progress in bridging the research practice gap by identifying novel ideas and practical strategies through meaningful discourse. As I look across the room, I'm so pleased to see such a diverse group of practitioners, researchers, academics, and administrators. And I wanted to share something with you. We have over 45 organizations represented here today, and I'm very excited about that. If you look at this slide, you can see the diversity in who we have here today. So I'm very excited about the potential of our conversation today and tomorrow. And I thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. And I'm hoping that our time together will be intellectually stimulating, practically relevant to what you do, and provide us all with some ideas on how to work together to bridge this research practice gap. We have a variety of panels planned, headed by an outstanding group of internationally known and respected leaders in our field. They'll provide us with some ideas and strategies on how to overcome common challenges faced across a variety of real practice settings and contexts, such as how to balance fidelity of empirically supported interventions with the complexities of cultural diversity and comorbidity in real-world settings, and identifying and implementing useful organizational support structures and implementation strategies and frameworks to support the implementation of evidence-based practice. The goal of this symposium is to end with a set of recommendations to bridge the research practice gap, informed by both the presentations today and tomorrow, and your reactions to these presentations. These recommendations and the final list that is vetted by the National Organizing Committee for this conference will be placed on the conference website for your reference and published within a special issue of Research on Social Work Practice, whose editor, Dr. Bruce Sire, is here today in the back of the room. I'm hoping the symposium will facilitate the connection between researchers, faculty, administrators, and practitioners on this important topic, and inform meetings to keep this dialogue going at our professional conferences, including NASW, CSWE, and SWIR. Before introducing our keynote speaker, I'd like to thank a few people. The National Steering Committee for this event, listed on page 3, many of whom have agreed to serve as presenters, and Dr. Alan Rubin, who mentored me in the process of being a first-time conference chair. Our GCSW Symposium Planning Committee members, many of which are in this room, and the faculty and staff who have provided tremendous support, including our research centers and Associate Dean for Research, Dr. Patrick Bordnick. I'd also like to thank my amazing conference planning team, Holly Oxhandler, she's a Ph.D. candidate, and my fantastic grad assistant, thank you, Emilio Escamilla, who many of you who are presenting, you know him. He's been integral in this process. And Albert Mancias, who has done a lot of the hard work getting everything together for this conference. Thank you. I'd also like to thank our university sponsors listed on page 20, and our major sponsors for the event, the College of Social Work, University of Tennessee, Knoxville, the School of Social Welfare, University at Albany, and the Fernando J. Zuniga y Rivero Foundation. We're so appreciative of your support of this event. Finally, some conference logistics. The bathrooms are right through here, okay? If you can turn your cell phones to silent or off, that would be great. Your food tickets are actually in the back of your name tag. So if you're looking for those. And if you're needing CEUs, you have a form within your packet that you can fill out and turn in on the second day to the registration table. And please turn in your evaluations. Those are important for us. There's an evaluation for each day. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our keynote speaker and a dear friend and colleague to many here today, Dr. Alan Rubin, Burke Kruger Smith Centennial Professor of Social Work at the University of Texas at Austin. We are extremely fortunate to have him here today as our keynoter. He's a pioneer and leader in the field whose work over the past 4 decades has had a significant and widespread impact on social work practice and research. A social worker by training, he received his MSW at the University of Pittsburgh and subsequently directed an outpatient mental health program for adolescents at the Western Psychiatric Institute and Clinic in Pittsburgh. After receiving his Ph.D. at the University of Pittsburgh, he directed several national research projects at the Council on Social Work Education in New York City. Dr. Rubin emerged as an early leader in the field in social work research in the mid-1980s, having been commissioned by the National Institute on Mental Health to write a seminal report highlighting the state of social work research in mental health, which then served as the basis for the establishment of the National Institute of Social Work for Social Work Research and its priorities. Since joining the faculty at UT Austin in 1979, he has served on over 14 professional journal boards, published 30 books, co-authored over 100 articles and book chapters on a myriad of practice topics,
including evidence-based practice, EMDR, chronic mental illness, substance abuse, and child welfare. Dr. Rubin was also a leader and pioneer in the early development of the Society of Social Work and Research, SWORD. He served as vice president from 1996 to 1998, was president from 1998 to 2000 during the early years of the organization. He continues to serve on and chair various SWORD committees. He's also a little bit of a celebrity too, as you all know, many of you know, especially to former MSW students like me who had his textbook. Raise your hand if you've had his textbook. Look at that. It's amazing. It's not surprising. It's the best-selling research methods textbook in social work. It's been adopted by approximately 40% of schools of social work each year since 1989, and it's now in its 7th edition. He's also known for something else. I don't know if you've heard. Those of you who have gone to UT know that he's known for the Rubin experience, and I went through that. And this is a picture of myself and my Ph.D. cohort after we finished the class. We're smiling. No, in all seriousness, it was a great experience, and we all still reflect on how much we learned in his class because he's honest and he teaches us to think critically. And I'm so grateful that he was my mentor because he taught me to write, how to think critically about research, and just oriented me to academia in general. So I'm grateful for that. He's obviously passionate about bridging the research practice gap, and his scholarship shows that. He's disseminated several how-to guides, practice guides for implementing empirically supported programs and interventions, such as the Practitioner's Guide to Using Research for Evidence-Based Practice and the Clinician's Guide to Evidence-Based Practice. It's a multi-volume publication that provides treatment guides for practitioners in areas of PTSD, substance abuse, schizophrenia, depression, child welfare, and military social work. In 2006, Dr. Rubin organized and convened a national symposium on improving the teaching of evidence-based practice in Austin, Texas. Many of you attended that. And it was described by many as historic, a landmark, and a milestone, given the wide attendance of over 200 social work faculty from 35 U.S. states and abroad. And the result of the symposium, the impact is clear. It's impacted social work education and the CSWE and EPA statement. He's also received many national awards, but I'll share just a few with you today. 1993, the University of Pittsburgh School of Social Work's Distinguished Alumnus Award. 1997, the Society for Social Work and Research Award for Outstanding Examples of Published Research. He was renominated again in 1998 and 1999. 2007, the Significant Lifetime Achievement Award in Social Work Education from the Council on Social Work Education. 2010, inducted as a fellow in the American Academy of Social Work and Social Welfare, an honorific society of distinguished scholars and practitioners. Dr. Rubin is without a doubt a thought leader in our field, highly respected for his progressive and innovative ideas and comfort when presenting contrarian views and questioning the status quo when necessary. Today he will present illuminating practical and provocative ideas on bridging the research practice gap in social work. I feel very fortunate that Dr. Rubin has agreed to deliver today's keynote, which is titled Efforts to Bridge the Gap Between Research and Practice in Social Work, Precedents and Prospects, especially since he's putting on his own conference in just 1 week on military social work in Austin, Texas. So please join me in giving Dr. Alan Rubin a nice warm welcome.